Many months ago, before the wedding, Mama Debbie, the mother of the bride, had already started worrying about her daughter's safety. It began the day Debbie came home glowing for no reason. "Mommy," she said, trying to look normal and composed, "I met someone." Mama Debbie did not panic immediately. After all, she had raised Debbie well and she knew this day would come. But she also knew something else. Men cannot be trusted. "What is his name?" she asked calmly. "Femi." "His full name?" "Femi Akinwale." "What does he do?" Mama Debbie asked. "He works in tech." Mama Debbie narrowed her eyes slightly. "Tech meaning?" "He builds software," Debbie replied. "Software meaning?" Debbie frowned. "Mommy." Mama Debbie looked serious. "I am asking a simple question." Debbie laughed. "He's a consultant." Consultant, another invisible job. Mama Debbie kept her face neutral, but inside, alarm bells were already stretching. "When will I see him?" she asked. "Soon." "Not soon. I want to see him now," she said. 2 weeks later, Femi came to visit. He came with a fruit basket, wore a simple native attire and smiled innocently, too innocently. Mama Debbie watched him from head to toe like an airport security. "So," she began politely, "which church do you attend?" Femi folded his hands respectfully and replied, "I believe in God deeply." "That is good," Mama Debbie replied. "But where do you attend?" "I am spiritual," Femi replied. The room became quiet. Debbie smiled nervously. Mama Debbie leaned back slowly. "Spiritual how?" "I pray. I meditate. I try to live intentionally," Femi replied. "Intentionally. Meditate. These were not words Mama Debbie trusted. She smiled small. "That is nice." After he left that day, she called her sister Auntie Bosse immediately. "This boy is too organized," Mama Debbie said. That one is good now," Auntie Bosse replied. "No, organized men know how to hide things." "What did he say?" Auntie Bosse asked. "He said he's spiritual." Auntie Bosse gasped. Yes, so what does that one mean?" "I don't know. That is why I am uncomfortable." Mama Debbie did not sleep well that night. She replayed the conversation in her mind. He did not stutter. He did not overtalk. He did not even defend himself. He simply smiled like someone with an inner Wi-Fi connection. The next month, Femi came again. He came with a small gift for Mama Debbie and said, "I got you herbal tea." She stared at the box. "Why?" "I noticed you like tea," Femi replied. Mama Debbie froze. He noticed? When? How? Still, she accepted it slowly and said, "Thank you." However, that night, she poured the tea down the sink. Not because she believed it was poison, but just in case. Months passed and Femi remained consistent. He called her politely and visited respectfully. He never argued with Debbie and never disrespected her, which made it worse because Mama Debbie preferred obvious problems. She knew how to fight obvious problems. This one is rare and suspicious. One evening, Debbie came home again smiling. "Mommy!" "Yes," Mama Debbie replied. "He proposed." Mama Debbie blinked 4 times. "Proposed? How?" "With a ring." "Where?" Mama Debbie asked. "At a restaurant," Debbie replied. "Public?" "Yes," Debbie replied. Mama Debbie closed her eyes briefly. "Did you say yes?" Debbie blinked. "Of course I did." Mama Debbie stood up slowly. "Of course." She walked to her room quietly. She did not shout or cry. She just knelt down and prayed. "God, if this boy is hiding anything, expose it before the wedding." She fasted small and prayed plenty. Then she asked discreet questions through distant relatives, but nothing bad appeared. He had a job. He had both parents alive. He had a stable history. Even her pastor said he seems fine, but she did not like seems. Soon, the wedding planning officially began and Femi handled the logistics. He did not complain about the expenses. Neither did he fight over the guest lists. He simply agreed to everything. Mama Debbie observed carefully. During the introduction ceremony, she watched his body language when the elder spoke. He did not fidget. He looked confident, too confident. As the wedding proper approached, Mama Debbie called Debbie into her room one evening and said, "Sit." Debbie sat. "Do you trust him?" Mama Debbie asked. Debbie nodded, "Yes." "Are you sure?" Debbie nodded again, "Yes." "Do you know marriage is not only about love?" Debbie nodded, "I know. It is about destiny." Debbie rolled her eyes. "Mommy, I am serious," Mama Debbie said. "I am happy," Debbie replied. Mama Debbie looked at her daughter's face. She saw innocence, she saw hope, and she also saw trust. Now that trust made her uncomfortable. She finally said, "Okay, but remember, I am watching." Debbie laughed. "Watching what?" "Everything." Weeks later, the wedding day came beautifully. Everything was in order. Mama Debbie smiled publicly, but in her heart, she was still observing. And then, when Debbie announced after the reception, "We are leaving tomorrow morning for honeymoon," Mama Debbie's spirit tightened slightly. "To where?" she asked calmly. "A resort. It's a quiet place." "Quiet?" Mama Debbie asked. "Yes," Debbie nodded. "How quiet?" "Very quiet," Debbie replied. Mama Debbie forced a smile. "Quiet places were dangerous. Quiet is where secrets breathe." That night, while everyone basked in the just concluded celebration, Mama Debbie sat alone in her room staring at her phone. She searched for the hotel. She looked at pictures. She zoomed in and imagined a lot of things. Her heart refused to relax. The hotel looked too peaceful. There were white bed sheets and soft lights. The balcony had a river view and a swimming pool that looked like temptation. She zoomed out one photo and squinted. "Why is the light so dim?" she muttered. Dim lights meant secrecy. Secrecy meant room for nonsense. She clicked another picture. It was the couple package, which included rose petals on bed, fruit baskets, and breakfast in bed. She inhaled sharply. Breakfast in bed? On honeymoon? She shook her head. "Lord, please give me strength." Just then, a message from Debbie came in. "Mommy, we have packed. Femi booked the executive suite. The place looks beautiful online." Mama Debbie adjusted her sitting position. "Executive," she whispered. "For what?" She opened the hotel website again and clicked "Book Now." Her fingers hovered around it. She closed the page and then opened it again. "I am not following," she convinced herself. "I am only verifying." She scrolled through available rooms. Fortunately, there was one standard room left on the same dates. Her heart beat louder. "This is not coincidence. It was predestined," she whispered dramatically. She picked up her glasses and entered her details slowly. Name: Mrs. Omolara Adebisi, not Adeyemi. She used a different surname just in case. She paused at the payment page and prayed, "Holy Spirit, if this is wrong, let network misbehave." But the network was strong. The payment went successfully. She stared at the confirmation email. Room 304. She quickly checked Debbie's honeymoon confirmation message again. Room 307. Her eyes widened. God is involved. 3 rooms away was a good monitoring distance. That night, she packed a small bag that was just enough for observation. She selected 2 wrappers, 1 nightgown, 1 prayer shawl, and 1 emergency anointing oil. She folded them all carefully. Then she called Auntie Bosse. "They have left, oh." Auntie Bosse replied, "Okay." "I am traveling small," Mama Debbie said. "To where?" Auntie Bosse asked. "To retreat." "What kind of retreat?" Auntie Bosse asked. "It's a strategic one." Auntie Bosse went silent. Then she asked, "You want to follow them, Abi?" Mama Debbie frowned. "Follow is a strong word." "So what word then?" Auntie Bosse asked. "Observe." Auntie Bosse scoffed. "From where?" "Nearby." Auntie Bosse inhaled deeply. "Debbie will not like this, so sure you know." Mama Debbie scoffed. "Debbie does not know what she does not know." The next morning, Mama Debbie left early. She locked her door properly and informed the landlord that she would be away for a few days. I am going for a prayer program, she said. The landlord nodded respectfully. On the bus ride, she sat upright like an undercover agent. She watched other passengers suspiciously. What if Femi had a secret associate following too? She shook her head. No. No paranoia was allowed. When she arrived at the hotel entrance, she paused. The building was tall, polished and calm. She adjusted her head wrap, put on large sunglasses and changed her walking style slightly. She entered the lobby. The receptionist smiled warmly. "Good afternoon, ma." "Good afternoon," Mama Debbie replied. "Welcome to Riverside Suites." Mama Debbie smiled and nodded like a woman who always stayed in Riverside Suites. "I have a reservation," she said. "Name, please." She cleared her throat lightly. "Mrs. Omolara Adebisi." The receptionist typed, "Yes, ma, room 304. Mama Debbie's heart started to beat faster. So fast, she thought. The receptionist continued politely. "Are you here for vacation?" She hesitated briefly. "No, spiritual retreats." The receptionist blinked. "Oh, yes," Mama Debbie smiled. "For inner alignment." The receptionist nodded slowly. "Of course, ma." She collected her key card with dignity. As she walked towards the elevator, she whispered quietly, "Debbie, you will thank me later." When she stepped onto the third floor, her heart started racing. Room 304. 3 doors away from 307. She slowly walked past 307, pretending not to notice it. Then she froze. She heard laughter inside. That was Debbie's laughter. It sounded so happy and carefree. Mama Debbie's face tightened slightly. "She's laughing already," she muttered. She unlocked her own room, entered quietly and closed the door. Then she placed her bag down and walked to the window. From her angle, she could see parts of the pool area. She sat on the bed and pressed the mattress. It was very comfortable, too comfortable. She suddenly stood up. "This is not why I am here." She went to her door, opened it slightly and listened. Footsteps passed in the hallway. She closed it quickly. Her phone vibrated again. It was a message from Debbie. "Mommy, this place is so peaceful." Mama Debbie stared at the message. Peaceful? Well, peace had always been suspicious. She typed back carefully. "Enjoy, I am praying." Then she whispered to herself and watching. She opened her small notebook and wrote at the top of the page, "Observation log." Underneath she wrote, "Hotel environment quiet. The staff polite. The lighting slightly dim. Executive suite is suspiciously close to the river." She paused and then added, "I heard laughter from room 307. The mood was relaxed." She closed the notebook slowly. Still, her heart refused to relax. Mama Debbie was determined that if anything strange were to happen, she would not hear it from Story. She would hear it from the next door, live and direct. That first night was quiet, too quiet. She sat on the edge of her bed with her ears alert like a security dog. Every small sound became suspicious. Whenever the door closed, whenever water ran, or soft laughter, or footsteps in the hallway, she would jump up. At exactly 9:14 p.m., she heard Debbie's voice through the wall. Mommy would laugh if she saw this. Mama Debbie stiffened. Saw what? She stood up immediately and moved closer to the wall. Femi's voice responded softly. "You are safe with me." "Safe with me, Bawo?" Mama Debbie gasped quietly. That sentence was dangerous. Safe with me meant dependence. Dependence meant control. And control meant future problem. She opened her notebook quickly and wrote, 9:14 p.m. The husband was using reassuring language, possible psychological bonding. She underlined the psychological twice. 10 minutes later, she heard clinking of glasses. She narrowed her eyes. "Wine? By this time?" she whispered. She had warned Debbie about wines because wine leads to relaxed decisions, and relaxed decisions lead to destiny mistakes. She pressed her ear closer to the wall. Suddenly, her phone rang loudly. The ringtone shattered the silence. She jumped and the laughter next door stopped. Footsteps moved closer to the door. Mama Debbie froze. Someone knocked lightly on her door. Her heart stopped completely. "Hello?" Femi's voice said politely from outside. "Excuse me, we heard a noise. Are you okay?" "Hello?" Mama Debbie cleared her throat quickly and tried to change her voice. "I am fine," she replied. "Okay, I'm just checking." His footsteps moved away. Mama Debbie sank onto the bed dramatically. "He already suspects," she whispered. She switched her ringtone to silent immediately. The next morning, she woke up very early, before 6 a.m. She needed visual confirmation, so she wore her large sunglasses again and tied her wrapper differently this time to look less like mother of the bride and more like a retired school principal on a retreat. She stepped into the hallway quietly and froze when she saw that room 307 door was slightly open. She moved closer slowly. Inside, she heard laughter again. Femi's voice sounded relaxed and Debbie sounded happy. Mama Debbie peeked lightly through the gap and saw them sitting at the small table inside the suite. They were eating breakfast. Femi fed Debbie a piece of fruit. Mama Debbie gasped silently. "Feeding? That level of intimacy already on day one?" Her heart started to beat faster. Suddenly, Debbie looked towards the door. Mama Debbie jerked back quickly and pretended to examine the wall decoration. Debbie stepped out into the hallway briefly. Mama Debbie adjusted her sunglasses lower on her nose and coughed like a stranger. Debbie paused. "Mommy!" Mama Debbie nearly fainted. Debbie squinted. "Oh, no, sorry," she muttered to herself. "You look like someone I know." Mama Debbie turned slightly sideways and walked away slowly. Back in her room, she locked the door immediately. "That was close," she whispered. She sat down and replayed everything she saw. They looked normal and sounded normal. There was no chanting, no strange incense, and no suspicious items, just laughter. Well, that annoyed her slightly. She decided to upgrade the observation method. At 11 a.m., she walked to the hotel restaurant. If they came for buffet, she would be able to observe their body language closely. She sat at the corner table pretending to read a devotional. 15 minutes later, Debbie and Femi entered. They looked relaxed. Debbie wore a simple dress while Femi wore a casual shirt. They sat 2 tables away. Mama Debbie lowered her head slightly and listened as Femi spoke. "I'm glad your mom came around at the wedding." Mama Debbie stiffened. "Came around? What does that even mean?" Debbie laughed lightly. "She will always worry. That is her love language." "Love language?" Mama Debbie felt slightly offended. "Is worry now a language?" Femi smiled. "She raised you well." Mama Debbie paused. "Raised you well? That was respectful." She wrote in her notebook again. "Husband complimenting her upbringing. Tone sincere." She frowned, but sincere men were usually confusing. Oh. Suddenly, Femi stood up to get juice. As he passed her table, he slowed slightly and looked at her, not for long, but just enough to nod and greet. "Good morning, ma." Mama Debbie nodded nervously. "Good morning." Her heart began to beat faster. Did he recognize her voice from last night? Did he notice the sunglasses too big for her face? He turned to Debbie calmly and they continued eating, laughing and talking. There was no sign of wickedness or secret ritual. It was just normal honeymoon behavior. Mama Debbie felt strangely unsettled. If nothing was wrong, what was she doing here? But she pushed the thought away quickly and convinced herself that vigilance is not foolishness. After breakfast, she followed them at a safe distance as they walked towards the pool. She hid behind a large potted plant near the walkway and crouched slightly. Unfortunately, the plant was shorter than her expectation. Femi suddenly turned around and their eyes met. Full eye contact. Mama Debbie straightened up immediately and pretended to admire the sky. Femi blinked slowly, then smiled slightly. It was a polite smile. He whispered something to Debbie. Debbie looked back. Mama Debbie quickly turned her back completely. She began walking in the opposite direction with unnecessary confidence. However, inside her head, alarms were ringing. He knows. He definitely knows she was the one. Back in her room, she locked the door again, sat on the bed and held her chest. This boy is too calm. Her phone vibrated. It was a message from Debbie. Mommy, what are you doing today? Mama Debbie stared at the message and typed carefully, I am resting. Debbie replied instantly, that is good. Rest is important. Mama Debbie looked at the screen for a long moment. Rest? She looked around her hotel room and shook her head. She had traveled to supervise, but so far all she had seen was affection, laughter and respect, which made it worse because now she was confused, and confusion is dangerous for someone who came prepared for battle. If there is no enemy, what do you fight? Mama Debbie stared at her notebook and flipped through the pages. The observation log read, husband calm, tone respectful, no strange visitors, no suspicious incense, laughter consistent, body language affectionate. She tapped her pen against the paper. There was nothing criminal here, nothing spiritual, and nothing even mildly dramatic had happened. She felt almost cheated. Is this how honeymoon is? She whispered to herself. At 7 p.m., her stomach began to protest loudly. She had eaten lightly at breakfast because surveillance is easier on empty stomach. But now, hunger was shouting her name. She checked her phone. The hotel dinner buffet runs from 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Her eyes narrowed again. Buffet meant public space. Public space meant proximity, and proximity meant a good opportunity. She stood up with new determination and declared, this is where truth reveals itself. She changed into another wrapper, something neutral that said retired principal. She adjusted her glasses and practiced some neutral face positions in the mirror. You are just a guest, she told her reflection, just eating. When she entered the restaurant, her confidence was high. The buffet was beautiful with different options of rice, pasta, grilled chicken, fish, salads that looked expensive, and desserts shining like temptation. Mama Debbie forgot the mission for one small moment. She picked up a plate, then another plate, then a small bowl for soup, then the small dessert plate, just in case. As she moved down the buffet line, she saw Debbie and Femi standing 2 steps ahead laughing. Her heart jumped into her throat. She tried to turn slowly, but the queue was tight. There was no escape this time around. Debbie turned casually with a plate in her hand and their eyes met. Unfortunately, her disguise didn't work this time around. Silence fell in Mama Debbie's world. Mommy! Debbie called. The word echoed. Femi turned immediately. He looked from Debbie to Mama Debbie, then back again. His face did something between surprise and confirmation. Mama! Mama Debbie held her plate like contraband. For 3 seconds, nobody spoke. Around them, other guests continued scooping rice peacefully. Debbie blinked twice. Mommy, what are you doing here? Mama Debbie cleared her throat. I came for a retreat. Retreat? Debbie asked. Yes, her mother nodded. In our honeymoon hotel? Debbie asked again. The silence expanded. Femi spoke next. Ma, are you staying here? Mama Debbie nodded slowly. Yes, room 304. Debbie's eyes widened. We are in 307. Yes, I know, Mama Debbie replied before thinking. By now, the line behind them grew impatient. Ma, please move now, someone said. Mama Debbie stepped aside stiffly. Debbie placed her plate down on the nearest table. Mommy, please explain better because I don't understand. Mama Debbie swallowed hard. I was just passing. Passing another state? Debbie asked. I felt led, Mama Debbie replied. Femi stood there holding the spoon of jollof rice in the air. He lowered it slowly and said, Mama Debbie, Did you follow us? The word follow felt sharp. Mama Debbie straightened. No, I did not follow. I observed. Observed what? Femi asked. Mama Debbie pointed at him. You. The surrounding tables began to notice the tension now. Debbie's cheeks turned red. Mommy, this is embarrassing. I am protecting you, Mama Debbie replied. From what? Mama Debbie lowered her voice. I don't know him. Femi inhaled slowly. But we already had a wedding. We are married. Even though, Mama Debbie replied. You approved us, Debbie said. I still need to monitor. Her mother shot back. Debbie held her head lightly. Mommy, you booked a room in our hotel. Yes, her mother nodded. Why? Because marriage is destiny, Mama Debbie replied. A small child at the nearby table stared openly at them. Femi placed his plate down carefully and said, Mama Debbie, if you had concerns, you could have spoken to me directly. I did, Mama Debbie replied. When? Femi asked. In my heart. Debbie looked like she wanted the ground to open up and swallow her. Mommy, you cannot supervise my honeymoon. I can supervise anything that concerns my child, her mother shot back. Femi looked frustrated now. I married her, he argued. I am not under probation. I am not your enemy. Mama Debbie's voice softened briefly. I know. Then why are you here? Femi asked. The question hung heavy in the air. Mama Debbie looked at Debbie's face. She looked happy, relaxed and safe. Nothing looked forced or manipulated. So the confusion returned stronger. Mama Debbie suddenly felt tired. She lowered her plate slowly onto the plate and said, I just needed to see. Debbie frowned. See what? To see if you are safe. Debbie felt hurt. Mommy, I am no longer a child. The words hit differently now. Mama Debbie's shoulders dropped slightly. Femi spoke more gently now. Mama Debbie, you are welcome to eat. You are not an enemy here. She looked at him carefully. He was still calm and respectful. It annoyed her and reassured her at the same time. Debbie sighed deeply. Please, let us sit. They sat at a table and that was the most awkward dinner in the history of honeymoon. Mama Debbie barely ate anything. Her appetite had evaporated. She watched them quietly now without hiding. Femi poured water for Debbie and Debbie smiled at him naturally. She had the newlywed glow on her already. Mama Debbie's chest tightened. Had she misjudged? Halfway through the meal, the hotel manager approached them politely. Good evening, ma. Yes, we received small complaints about raised voices just now. Mama Debbie was embarrassed. She quickly apologized. I am sorry about that. The manager smiled politely. No problem. Enjoy your evening. After the manager left, Femi looked at Mama Debbie and said, I am not your former experience, ma. The sentence landed well and Mama Debbie did not respond immediately. She knew he was referring to her past. She knew he was right, but letting go of vigilance felt dangerous. She stood up slowly and said, I will go to my room. Debbie looked at her. Mommy. Mama Debbie turned. Yes. Please, Debbie said. The word was simple but pregnant. Mama Debbie nodded slightly. She picked up her plate and walked away slowly. Back in her room, she locked the door and sat on the bed. Her heart was beating fast from shame. She replayed the scene in her mind. Mama, did you follow us? The question kept echoing. She removed her glasses slowly and placed them on the bedside table. She had come ready to catch something, but instead she had been caught. She stood up and paced slowly. I was just protecting her, she muttered, but the words were not convincing anymore. Just then, Debbie sent her a message. Mommy, can we talk? Mama Debbie stared at the screen for a long moment and typed, you can come. 5 minutes later, there was a knock on her door. She opened the door and Debbie stood there alone without Femi. Good, at least this conversation would not have audience. Debbie entered quietly and sat on the small chair by the window. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Mama Debbie looked at her daughter carefully. She was glowing and looking so calm. There was no signs of distress. Mommy, Debbie began. Why? why did you do it? Mama Debbie sat on the bed and folded her hands together. I needed to see with my own eyes. See what exactly? Debbie asked. To see that you are safe. Debbie inhaled slowly. Mommy, you think I cannot know if I am safe? Didn't you raise me well? Mama Debbie shook her head. It is not about knowing. It is about prevention. Debbie shook her head lightly. You did not prevent anything, Mommy. You just embarrassed me. The word embarrassed hurts more than follow even. Mama Debbie looked down at her hands. I have seen marriages fail, she said. I know, Debbie replied. I have seen calm men become storms. Debbie nodded. I know. I have seen destiny twists, Mama Debbie said again. Debbie replied, I know, Mommy, but I am not you. Mama Debbie swallowed hard. You think I am crazy? Debbie shook her head. No. You think I overreact? Debbie shook her head again. No. They both almost smiled. Debbie leaned forward slightly and said, Mommy, you raised me to think. You raised me to ask questions, and you raised me well enough to walk away if I see red flags. Mama Debbie nodded her head. Yes, so trust that you raised me well, Debbie said. The words landed heavily. Trust. She had been demanding trust from Femi while refusing to give it to her own daughter. A knock came on the door again. Debbie stood up. It's probably Femi. Mama Debbie's body went tense again. Debbie opened the door. Femi stepped in respectfully. Good evening, ma. Good evening, Mama Debbie replied awkwardly. Femi stood near the door, giving her distance. I want to say something, ma. Mama Debbie folded her arms defensively. I am listening. I understand your fear, ma. She looked at him. My mother fears for my sister the same way. Mama Debbie did not expect that. Femi continued. But fear cannot lead this marriage. You don't know me yet. That is fine. But you cannot monitor us like security camera. Debbie glanced between them nervously. Femi continued. If you had concerns, you could ask me anything. I would answer. Mama Debbie looked at his face carefully. I asked about your spiritual background, she said. Yes, you did. Femi nodded. You said you were spiritual. Femi nodded. Yes, I am. What does that mean truly? Femi paused briefly and said, it means I believe in God. I do not shout it. I live it out. Mama Debbie held his eyes carefully. And you will not harm my daughter? Femi smiled. Ma, I just married her publicly with pastor, with family, in front of so many witnesses. Mama Debbie almost smiled despite herself. Marriage certificate does not prevent foolishness, she said. That is true, Femi admitted, but character helps. Debbie spoke now. Mommy, please go home tomorrow. Mama Debbie felt something inside her chest loosen and tighten at the same time. Tomorrow? Debbie nodded. Yes, ma. You are sending me away? Debbie shook her head. No, I am asking you to respect boundary. Boundary? That word felt modern and sharp at the same time. She looked at both of them. They were united and peacefully standing together. For the first time, she saw it clearly. They were a unit now, and she was outside of that unit. The realization hurt, but it also confirmed something. Her daughter was not alone. She sighed deeply. Okay. Debbie blinked. Okay, what? Okay, I will go. I will leave tomorrow. Debbie's shoulders relaxed immediately. She stood up and hugged her mother tightly. Mommy, I love you. Mama Debbie held her for a long moment. I love you too. Femi cleared his throat politely. Thank you, ma. She looked at him one last time carefully. See, you are still under observation. Oh. Femi almost laughed. That is fair. The next morning, Mama Debbie packed her bag slowly. She informed the receptionist that she was checking out early. The receptionist asked politely, was your retreat peaceful, ma? Mama Debbie paused and said, yes, it was enlightening. As she stepped into the taxi, she looked up at the hotel building once more. Room 307 curtains were closed. A message came in from Debbie. "Mommy, safe journey." Mama Debbie typed back slowly, "Be wise." Then she added after small hesitation, "Be happy." She leaned back in the taxi seat. For the first time in months, her heart felt tired, not from suspicion but from release. She had traveled to supervise, but she left having learned something uncomfortable. Trust cannot be built through surveillance, and daughters eventually become women. When she reached home, the landlord greeted her casually. "Welcome back, ma. How was your prayer program?" Mama Debbie adjusted her bag and said, "It was successful." Inside her house, she sat down slowly, picked up her phone and opened Auntie Bosse's chats. Auntie Bosse had asked earlier, "Did you find anything?" Mama Debbie stared at the screen. Then she typed, "Yes." Auntie Bosse responded immediately. "What did you find?" Mama Debbie smiled slightly and replied, "Myself." Thank you for watching the story. Kindly share your thoughts about the story with me in the comment section. Give the story a thumbs up and share the story out with your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye.